When you stop initiating contact, something powerful happens. You give him the space to miss you. This isn't just about physical distance, it's about creating a mental and emotional gap. You see, when you're always available, always reachable, he doesn't have the chance to appreciate your presence fully. By stepping back and allowing him some room to breathe, you're allowing him to reflect on the time you spent together. Absence often makes the heart grow fonder. And this is exactly what happens when you don't constantly text or call him. You're creating a void, a space that his mind will naturally try to fill. He will wonder what you're up to, how you're doing, and why you're not reaching out to him. It's human nature for people to want what they can't have. And when you're no longer immediately available, his curiosity will naturally peak. This is the power of space. It triggers his need to reconnect, to reach out, and to fill that gap. But here's the thing, it's not about playing games or trying to manipulate someone. It's about understanding the dynamics of desire and attraction. Desire thrives when it's not guaranteed. By stepping back, you create an emotional gap that leaves him longing for you. This longing isn't driven by desperation, but by a genuine curiosity and appreciation for the connection you once shared. Now, the key here is balance. It's not about cutting him off completely or playing hard to get in a way that feels fake or insincere. It's about creating a natural rhythm where he has time to reflect on you and on the relationship without feeling smothered, overwhelmed. You're not doing this to punish him, but rather to make him realize that you have a full life of your own, and you don't need to constantly be in his orbit to feel complete. In fact, when you stop always reaching out, you put the power back in your hands. You send a silent but powerful message your attention is valuable, and it's not just something to be handed out freely. You don't need to constantly be in his world to know your worth. By pulling back, you start to make him realize just how important you are, and that in itself becomes an irresistible pull. This space isn't just about physical absence either. It's about mental space as well. When you're constantly available, there's no room for him to reflect on you, your relationship, and the connection you share. When you step back, you give him the opportunity to miss you, to crave the time you spent together, and to wonder what you're doing. That curiosity will work in your favor, slowly drawing him back toward you. So it's not about being cruel or distant, it's about allowing the natural rhythm of attraction to take place. It's about creating an environment where he begins to appreciate your presence in a deeper way. By stepping back, you don't just give him the space to miss you, you also give yourself the time to focus on your own life, your own growth, and your own well-being. In turn, this makes you even more attractive, and the cycle of attraction becomes stronger. So remember, when you stop reaching out, you're not creating distance out of resentment or anger. You're creating space for something much more powerful, the chance for him to truly see your worth, feel the void your absence creates, and realize that he wants you more than he ever did before. And when that happens, you'll know that the balance of power has shifted in your favor. When you stop contacting him constantly, you're not just creating physical space, you're also allowing him to experience emotional space. This is crucial because emotional space is where real feelings begin to grow. When you're always present, always available, it's easy for him to take you for granted. But when you stop reaching out, it creates a feeling of absence that he can't ignore. It's in that absence that he starts to realize how much you truly mean to him. You are no longer a guaranteed part of his daily life, and that can make him question the depth of his feelings for you. He'll start reflecting on the moments you shared and how much they matter. What you're doing is allowing him to feel the weight of your absence. And let me tell you, this is one of the most powerful things you can do in a relationship. When we're always around, it's easy for others to forget just how valuable we are. But when we pull away, we trigger something primal. We trigger the need to reconnect, to reach out, and to see if the relationship is still as strong as it once was. By stopping the constant communication, you essentially create a vacuum that demands to be filled. Now, let's talk about the shift that happens in him when you stop contacting him. He'll begin to wonder, where is she? Why isn't she reaching out? This will create a sense of urgency within him. And that urgency is exactly what you want. You see, when someone becomes aware of the possibility of losing you, that's when the real feelings start to surface. He's not used to the idea of you being distant. And the thought of not having your presence in his life will push him to act. This isn't a game, it's simply human psychology. People are motivated by the fear of loss. It's important to realize that this space isn't about trying to make him miss you in a manipulative way. It's not about playing mind games or trying to make him feel guilty. It's about creating an environment where he has to acknowledge your absence in a way that's both powerful and natural. It's about making him realize that you are a person of value and you deserve the space to be treated with respect and care. What happens next is equally as important. When you stop initiating contact, you give him the space to miss you and reflect on the relationship. This reflection is where the magic happens. In that space, he has time to realize what you bring to the table and how much he values your presence. It's like a mirror being held up to his emotions. He sees that you are someone he can't just take for granted. You stop reaching out, and in doing so, you forced him to confront how important you really are. But here's where the beauty lies. When you stop reaching out, you're also respecting yourself. You're teaching him that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable and they're not to be handed out freely. You're setting a standard for how you expect to be treated. This is the moment when you stop chasing and start allowing things to unfold naturally. When you do this, you no longer find yourself in a position of desperation or neediness. You are standing your power, knowing that the right person will appreciate your presence without you having to prove your worth. The shift that happens when you stop communicating isn't about withdrawal or abandonment. It's about regaining control of your own life. It's about showing him that you have your own interests, your own passions, and your own desires. You're not waiting around for him to validate your worth. Instead, you're showing him that you have a full life of your own, and that's a powerful message to send. In the end, the emotional space you create will bring a shift in how he sees you. You're not just someone who is there for him whenever he calls. You've become someone he has to actively pursue, someone who holds their own value. And as he begins to feel the absence, he'll realize that your presence is something he doesn't want to live without. When you stop reaching out to him, you're essentially taking the reins of your emotional well-being. It's a powerful step in reclaiming your worth and showing that your time and energy are valuable. This shift may seem uncomfortable at first, but it's one of the most important things you can do to regain control of the dynamic between you two. For so long, we've been conditioned to believe that love and affection must always be given, that we must always chase, always reach out, always show we care. But in truth, the most magnetic thing you can do is to stop. When you stop reaching out, you shift the energy. Suddenly, he's no longer the one with the upper hand. The power dynamic starts to shift, and this is where things get interesting. It's no longer about you proving your worth. It's about him coming to terms with the fact that he might lose you. That realization is what can turn the tables. By choosing not to contact him, you're sending a clear message: I am enough, and I don't need to chase anyone to prove my value. This is not about playing hard to get. It's about taking a step back and allowing him the chance to see who you are without the pressure of a constant communication. You allow space for him to feel what's missing, for him to experience the impact of your absence in his life. This is the point where the shift begins to happen. In relationships, we often forget that we can't control how others feel. But what we can control is how we show up for ourselves. When we stop chasing someone, we show them that we have our own life, our own desires, our own needs. We're not desperate for their attention. We're perfectly fine without it. That's incredibly attractive to someone because it shows emotional maturity. When you stop reaching out, you're demonstrating confidence and self-assurance. And whether he admits it or not, that confidence is magnetic. What happens next is that he starts to wonder. He wonders why you stopped reaching out. He wonders what you're up to, who you're spending time with, what you're doing with your life. And that curiosity begins to grow. The space you've created starts to make him question his own feelings. He realizes that you stopped seeking him out. And suddenly the power has shifted to him. He's no longer in control of the situation. He must now take the initiative if he wants to keep you in his life. But here's the key point. This is not about waiting around for him to make the first move. This is about you taking a step back for your own growth. By creating this space, you allow him to miss you, but more importantly, you also give yourself the time to grow and rediscover your own sense of worth. You're no longer investing all of your emotional energy into someone else. Instead, you're investing that energy into yourself, into your own happiness and well-being. You see, when you stop reaching out, you're telling him and yourself that you're not in need of validation. You don't need constant communication to feel worthy or loved. You're standing on your own 2 feet, showing that you are complete as you are. This subtle shift is what makes the biggest impact. You stop being available 24/7, and suddenly you're the one that he starts to miss. He starts to appreciate you not because you're always there, but because you've created space for him to realize your value. As he begins to notice the absence, he's going to want to reach out. And when that happens, he won't be doing it out of obligation or habit. He'll be doing it because he genuinely realizes that he doesn't want to lose you. You've shown him that you're not desperate for his attention, but that you also won't settle for anything less than what you deserve. The key here is to maintain your self-respect and let the process unfold naturally. The message here is simple. When you stop contacting him, you give him the opportunity to come to you on his own terms. You create space for him to reflect on the relationship and decide if it's something he values enough to work for. And that, my friend, is where the magic happens. When you create distance by not reaching out, you are setting boundaries that are crucial for maintaining your self-respect and emotional well-being. Boundaries are not just about saying no to others, they are about saying yes to yourself. When you stop chasing someone, you stop allowing yourself to be in a position where you're constantly giving away your emotional energy without receiving the same in return. This can be one of the most freeing things you can do for yourself, because for once you're putting yourself first. It's natural to feel like you need to constantly reach out to someone you care about. We've all been there, feeling like we're giving so much of ourselves in hopes that they'll see our value. But what happens when you step back? What happens when you refuse to invest more of your emotional energy into a one-sided dynamic? The result is that you start to honor yourself more. You stop feeding into the idea that your worth is determined by how much someone else gives you. This act of stepping back and not reaching out to him is an assertion of your value. It's about respecting your time, energy, and emotions. When we constantly reach out to someone, we sometimes lose sight of our own importance, thinking that we must prove ourselves to them. But by not reaching out, you remind yourself that you are worthy of respect, love, and attention, and that you won't settle for anything less than what you deserve. It's not about playing games or trying to make someone jealous. It's about rediscovering the importance of your own life and your own needs. By creating distance, you create space for him to see what's missing when you're not around. It's a subtle shift in energy that can trigger profound change in the dynamic between you. He will start to realize that he no longer has access to you at his convenience, and this will push him to reassess the relationship. However, this doesn't mean you should just wait idly for him to reach out. This is not a waiting game, it's a self-respect game. When you stop chasing him, you start living for yourself, and your focus shifts to your own growth and happiness. You stop giving him the power to control your emotions or dictate your actions. The longer you maintain this distance, the more you reinforce that you are your own priority. You see, when you don't reach out, you're essentially telling him that you are too valuable to be treated as an option. You are teaching him how to treat you by showing that you won't tolerate anything less than genuine interest and respect. This is about you standing in your power and refusing to accept anything that doesn't align with the value you know you bring to the table. It's a quiet but strong act of self-love. By respecting your own boundaries, you not only elevate your own sense of self-worth, but you also give him the opportunity to come to you with intention. When he realizes that you've stopped reaching out, it might stir feelings of guilt or curiosity. He might wonder where you went, why you stopped contacting him, and whether you're moving on. And that curiosity, my friend, is the beginning of him taking responsibility for his own role in the relationship. It's critical to understand that your value is not dependent on whether or not he reaches out. Your value is intrinsic, and this is the lesson that the no contact rule teaches. It's not about manipulating him into caring. It's about showing him that you are more than just a convenient option in his life. You are a person with your own dreams, passions, and needs, and when you stop seeking out his attention, you start to align with your own worth. Ultimately, by practicing the no contact rule, you are taking control of your emotional state and teaching yourself to be independent of external validation. You begin to see your worth not through the lens of his attention, but through your own. And when he recognizes this, it's up to him to decide if he values you enough to make the effort. This space you've created is a reminder to him that you are not to be taken for granted. And in that space, you will find your own clarity, your own peace, and your own sense of empowerment. So when you stop reaching out, don't do it with the expectation that he'll come running. Do it because you know that you are worthy of more. You deserve someone who sees you for all that you are and is willing to show up for you, just as you show up for yourself. When you stop reaching out and create that space, you're not just testing his interest or playing a game. What you're really doing is creating an environment where self-reflection and growth can take place. Often, in relationships, both parties can get caught up in the dynamics of constantly reaching out, always trying to prove themselves, always striving to keep the connection alive. But by stepping back, you allow both yourself and him the opportunity to reflect. Think about how much energy you've spent in the past trying to keep the relationship moving forward. You've invested your time, your thoughts, your emotions, hoping that your efforts would be reciprocated. But have you ever stopped to think about what happens when you shift that focus back to yourself? When you stop giving so much, it's like a shift in the universe, the energy of the relationship changes, and it can often leave the other person thinking, what just happened? Creating distance isn't just about not reaching out. It's also about rediscovering who you are outside of the relationship. Have you ever felt like you were losing yourself in someone else? That you became so wrapped up in their thoughts and actions that you forgot about your own needs and desires? By pulling back, you give yourself the space to reestablish your identity. You stop being consumed by the desire to make them see you, and you start to focus on what brings you joy, what excites you, what fuels your soul. You remind yourself of your worth, not through their eyes, but through your own. The fascinating thing is that when you create this distance, not out of spite, but out of a desire to respect your own emotional needs, it naturally shifts the power dynamics. People often forget that the power in any relationship comes from knowing your own worth and being willing to stand by it. When you stop reaching out, you're reclaiming your power. You're not dependent on their actions to define how you feel about yourself. You're no longer seeking validation, nor are you worried about their reaction. It's about saying, I am enough, with or without you. And this is what makes the no contact rule so powerful. It's not about punishing the other person or trying to force their hand. It's about putting yourself in the driver's seat of your own life. It's about saying, I am going to live fully with or without you. And when you show this level of strength, it often leads to them questioning the relationship. The absence of your presence in their life acts like a mirror, reflecting back their behavior and actions. The truth is, people often don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. The no contact rule serves as a wake-up call, but it isn't about playing games. It's about demonstrating your value. It's about allowing space for them to realize the significance you brought to their life and what they're missing when you're no longer reaching out. It's about you allowing them to make the decision to step up. This space also allows them to reflect on their own actions. How many times have they taken your attention for granted? How many times have they not truly shown up for you? When you stop initiating contact, you give them the opportunity to take responsibility for their part in the dynamic. And by doing so, you create a shift in how they perceive the relationship. But here's the important part: when you're no longer the one constantly reaching out, you begin to see the truth. You see whether their interest is genuine or if it was based on convenience. You get clarity. By stepping away, you make room for honest reflection and for the other person to realize whether they value you enough to make the effort themselves. And that effort, when it comes, is the effort you deserve. Creating this distance, however, should never come from a place of bitterness or hurt. It should come from a place of love, self-love. It's about respecting yourself enough to say, I won't chase after someone who doesn't show up for me. I deserve someone who meets me halfway and is willing to put in the effort in doing so. You empower yourself and set a powerful example of how you should be treated. When you stop reaching out, you aren't giving up on the relationship. You're giving yourself permission to be your own priority, to focus on your happiness, and to take control of your emotional state. It's not about waiting for them to reach out. It's about doing the work of strengthening your own life and sense of self-worth. When they see that you are content and thriving without them, it will shock them, but it will also make them take a hard look at what they're missing. The space you create by not reaching out is not just a void. It's an opportunity for you to rediscover yourself and for them to reconsider how they approach the relationship. So in the end, the no contact rule is about reclaiming your emotional power and living a life that is not dependent on anyone else's actions. When you stand in that power, give yourself the gift of clarity and the strength to make decisions that align with your true worth. When you stop reaching out, something profound happens. You start to realize how much time and energy you were devoting to someone else's actions, thoughts, and feelings. It's a form of emotional investment that can drain you without you even realizing it. It's easy to get caught up in the cycle of constantly wondering what the other person is thinking, always checking your phone and measuring their responses to decide your next move. But when you stop that, it forces you to reconnect with yourself. You begin to rediscover your own thoughts, feelings, and desires without being clouded by someone else's mood or actions. The first few days or weeks might feel uncomfortable. You might second guess yourself, wondering if they're thinking about you or if you're making the right decision. But here's the secret: stopping contact is not about manipulating the situation. It's about taking back control of your own life. It's about showing yourself that you don't need someone else's validation to feel worthy or complete. The discomfort you feel is part of the process because you're breaking free from a cycle that had been dictating how you felt. You've likely spent a lot of your time and energy trying to keep the relationship alive, trying to make sure everything was okay, trying to make them see you in a certain light. But in doing that, you may have lost sight of yourself. This period of no contact becomes an opportunity for you to reestablish your identity. You might have forgotten what makes you laugh, what excites you, or what truly brings you peace. Without the constant distraction of the other person, you get a chance to breathe, to remember who you are outside of the relationship, and to realign with your own values. This time of separation also allows you to focus on the things that you've neglected. It's a chance to focus on your goals, your passions, and your friendships. You get to rediscover the things that make you feel fulfilled, not based on what someone else expects or needs from you, but based on your own desires. The more you embrace this time of self-reflection, the more you begin to see the value of spending time alone and nurturing yourself. Moreover, when you stop reaching out, you stop controlling the situation. The minute you let go of trying to make things happen, you give space for the other person to come to their own realizations. This space can be incredibly powerful because it allows them to reflect on their actions, their feelings, and their level of commitment. People often don't realize what they have until it's no longer available. When you stop reaching out, you make them confront the absence of your presence, which can lead them to see how important you truly are. In essence, this space serves as a form of self-care. It's not a punishment, it's an act of self-love. It's a decision to prioritize your emotional well-being over the anxiety that comes from overthinking their every move. It's choosing to put your energy into things that fuel you rather than continuously seeking answers from someone who might not be able to give them to you. This process also helps you build emotional resilience. The more you practice pulling back and relying on yourself for emotional strength, the less dependent you become on the other person for your happiness. You begin to realize that your happiness doesn't have to be tied to anyone else's actions or approval. You start to strengthen your ability to navigate life on your own terms without needing someone to confirm your worth. When you choose to stop reaching out, you create room for a deeper, more authentic connection whether that connection is with yourself or with the other person. You give yourself permission to be vulnerable, not by seeking approval, but by embracing who you are and standing firm in your value. And when they notice the shift in you, when they realize that you are no longer waiting for them, that you have found peace and fulfillment without their constant validation, that's when the magic happens. That's when they realize that the person they thought they could take for granted has become someone who values their own time, energy, and heart. This shift doesn't just affect the relationship, it affects you too. You grow stronger, more confident, and more aware of your own worth. You stop being driven by external forces and begin to live a life that's aligned with your values. It's not about being cold or distant. It's about choosing yourself and your happiness first. And when you do that, you send a powerful message. You are not here to chase after anyone's attention. You are here to live fully, with or without them. In the end, stopping the constant reaching out is not just a tactic, it's a form of self-respect. It's a way of reclaiming your energy and time and giving yourself permission to focus on the things that truly matter. So take that step. Give yourself the gift of emotional freedom and see how it transforms not only your relationship, but your entire life. When you stop reaching out, you're not just creating distance in a relationship. You're creating a space for personal growth and self-realization. It's in this space that you begin to experience something profound. You start rediscovering your true self, the one you may have put aside while focusing on someone else. Too often, we lose ourselves in relationships, whether it's romantic, familial, or friendships. We become so concerned with what the other person is thinking, feeling, or doing that we forget to check in with ourselves. So when you make the decision to stop reaching out, you're giving yourself the opportunity to listen to your inner voice again. You might be surprised at what you hear when you stop distracting yourself with someone else's emotions. You may realize that you've been putting off your own dreams and desires in favor of someone else's. You might discover that you've been living on autopilot, trying to fit into someone else's narrative rather than writing your own story. And this space also allows you to feel your emotions more clearly. When you stop the constant communication and need for reassurance, you'll feel the emotional weight lift. For the first time in a while, you might actually feel lighter. It's as if you've been carrying a heavy bag that you didn't even realize you were dragging behind you. As you step away, you're slowly putting that weight down piece by piece, and you're able to move forward in a more grounded, self-aware way. In fact, it's often when we stop reaching out that we finally give ourselves the time and space to heal from past emotional wounds. These wounds may have been buried under the pressure of keeping a relationship alive, under the constant need to be validated or noticed by someone else. And now, without that distraction, you have the ability to address those wounds, nurture them, and take care of your emotional health in a way you couldn't before. This emotional growth is powerful because it helps you build resilience. You begin to realize that you are not defined by your relationship status or the attention you receive from others. You are enough on your own. And that realization is transformative. When you don't need to chase after someone's approval or affection, you start to appreciate your own worth. This shift in perspective can elevate your self-esteem and change how you approach all aspects of life, not just relationships. Additionally, by stepping back, you're creating the necessary space for clarity. You begin to understand whether the relationship is truly in alignment with your life's values or if it was something you were clinging to out of habit or fear of being alone. Sometimes we continue relationships because we're afraid of being without them, not because they truly bring us joy or fulfillment. The no contact period helps you get clear about your needs, desires, and whether or not this person is genuinely adding value to your life. By detaching emotionally and mentally, you also create a space for growth and self-improvement. You're no longer consumed by what the other person is doing or thinking. Instead, you focus on your own progress, your goals, and your vision for the future. This shift in focus can be life-changing. You might find that during this period, you're able to accomplish things you had been putting off for years. Whether it's pursuing a new career opportunity, working on personal development, or building stronger friendships, you're now free to focus solely on your own growth. Now, it's important to note that this period of no contact isn't about punishing the other person or manipulating the situation. It's not about trying to make them feel guilty or cause them to chase after you. Rather, it's a personal decision to prioritize your own emotional well-being. It's about recognizing that you deserve peace, respect, and love, and that you shouldn't settle for anything less. By stepping back, you're making it clear to yourself and to the other person that your value is not up for negotiation. What happens when you create this space? The other person begins to feel the absence of your presence. They may not immediately realize it, but slowly they begin to notice that you're no longer there, waiting for their response or trying to reach out. And that absence, that space you've created, can be incredibly powerful. It makes them think about what they lost. It makes them reflect on the relationship with greater depth because they're no longer able to rely on your attention or affection as a constant. This is where the true magic happens. When you step away and stop reaching out, you're not being selfish, you're empowering yourself. You give yourself permission to be okay without their validation, which in turn makes them see you in a new light. They realize that you are a person with your own life, your own goals, and your own boundaries. They may begin to appreciate you in ways they never did before. You've taught them that you are not to be taken for granted. In the end, this space you create by stepping back is not just a time for the other person to reflect. It's a time for you to reflect too. You're showing yourself that you can live without the constant need for someone's approval. You are enough, and the absence of contact doesn't make you less important or less valuable. It makes you stronger, more self-assured, and more independent. So when you choose to stop reaching out, you're not just waiting for them to react. You're also taking a powerful step in your own journey toward emotional independence, clarity, and growth. You're saying to the world and to yourself that you have value and that you deserve to be treated with the respect and attention that you give to others. It's a message of self-love, self-respect, and strength that cannot be ignored.